One of my favorite Zen books that I find myself going back to again and again, and it's called Novice to Master, Ongoing Lesson to the Extent of My Own Stupidity. And it's by a wonderful teacher named Morinaga Roshi. And really, it's the first chapter that I keep rereading again and again, because I need to keep learning this again and again, my own stupidity, my own foolishness, and being open to that. Because as Roshi talked about yesterday, I feel like I can keep getting hidden from my own foolishness, which actually sets me free. In this first chapter, he talks about when he was a young man and really wanted to attain something, to really learn something about the Dharma, and really was, he was quite bedraggled and, quite a character. And he really wanted to, become enlightened and go and become, a wonderful Zen person. And this old teacher kept, kind of casting him out. And then one time he said, okay, you can stay. And your first task is to go and sweep the walkways. And he was, kind of disappointed. I want to, learn a Zen text, or I want to become, learn the forms of things. He had all these ideas, concepts. And so he just kind of got to it and, made this little pile of garbage, as he said, and then asked his teacher where the garbage was. His teacher told him. He threw this pile in the garbage. And his teacher said, what did you just do? And he said, well, I threw all that stuff in the garbage, because that's what the garbage is. And he said, let's go look. And the teacher undid the garbage, and inside he began getting really close to what was there and started finding that there were pebbles, and he made a little pile of little pebbles. Then he made a little pile of moss, little bits of moss, and a little pile of dirt. And he seemed so delighted. His teacher was like, so he brought this little tiny pile of dirt and put it around a tree, found the little pebbles and put it in between the stones, and he's like, this will help drain. And the moss he put with the other moss. And Morinaga was so taken aback by this. And to me, this is the promise of meditation practice. What BJ talked about, this kind of aesthetics, is this, I would say, even creativity. If we slow down enough, we can actually look at what's there and see that there's so many uses, so many possibilities right in front of us. There's one of my first patients that I went to see, I did this in my clinical training. One of the things I thought I wouldn't be able to do is to see very deformed people. And I thought I had a lot of aversion towards that, and I felt like actually I just couldn't do it. And this woman, I'll call her Cecile, has been really with me the last 2 days, just from years and years ago. And she was an oncology patient, palliative care patient, and a lot of the people on the team just felt like, she was kind of difficult, and, actually her family, because she's so difficult, her family has really stopped visiting, and her friends don't really come anymore, and, it's just a bit much, and especially in the last, 2 weeks or so. And they said, well, maybe the chaplain, they send in the chaplain, so you'll be able to engage her and to. So I went in and I knocked on the wall because she had a curtain for a door and a wall. And there was no response. And when I pulled the curtain back, there was this woman there, the body of a woman, and almost with no face. She had, about 2 or 3 weeks before, started a very aggressive steroid treatment that had inflated her face so much that you could barely see that there were eyes, a nose, and a mouth. It's almost like her face had kind of imploded on itself. And I was so shocked. And was able to, in that moment, just come back to my breath and feel myself on the earth, or in this case, the 9th floor of a hospital. But that was my earth. And I sat down with her, and this woman with this face turns to me. And she keeps saying something over and over again, and it's very difficult to understand what she's saying. And I said, well, I'll just pull up a seat and sit until I can understand you. I'm having trouble understanding you. And what she said was, thank you. I was able to see that there was a face in there, a human, a woman who had a life, who had friends, a family, who loved. And at 55 years old was dying. And for her to say a sentence took about 45 minutes. So she became very difficult for the team, for her family, for her friends to be with. So uncomfortable for this person that you can't almost recognize their humanness on the first glance. To actually realize that time has to change. You're not going to be able to have a conversation with this person the way you'd have a conversation with any other person. And to me, this was the beauty of my meditation practice. That after many years of, sitting a lot on long retreats and short retreats and every day, I realized that there's something important. It's actually not for itself. It's for these moments where we're encountering something, or when I was encountering Cecile, where I realized I have to shift everything. My idea that I had a lot of other people to see, my ideas of what someone is supposed to look like, of what I'm supposed to do with my aversion, my fear of actually that disfigurement, that I realized I needed to use all of it. In Buddhism and in Zen, there's these ethical guidelines for practice that I think are so important, And there's something that I return to all the time, these precepts. And the first one is really non-harming. So we can take this on if we choose to say, I vow to non-harm. And there are many, what's great about the precepts is that all of the kind of great Zen masters have kind of given their take on them. And then it's up to us to make our take on it. It's not for someone to like tell us how we're supposed to do it. But how do we understand these things? And that's what we do in our work, in our training, is really to, how do you really make it your own? And the first one, Bodhidharma, who is the founder, in some ways, of Zen Buddhism. He was this Indian guy who sailed on a leaf to go to China. It took him 3 years on this leaf. And when he got to China, these mythological stories are so great, right? Like that he did that. It took him a long time. But when he got there, you know, the emperor of the time, Emperor Wu, you know, was like, wow, there's some new interesting person here. I'd like to meet him. We're all kind of like that. Maybe in your work, you're like, oh, there's a new interesting person. I'm going to get to know them. And he asked Bodhidharma, you know, I've done all this great stuff. I've built monasteries. I've, you know, supported lots of monks. I've done lots of mitzvahs. What do I get? And Bodhidharma said, nothing. No merit. So this character, Bodhidharma, you know, he realized that he needed to go and face the wall after this encounter and started really practicing very strongly for 9 years. 9 years of retreat. And after that retreat, he actually wrote his own versions of these precepts. And for this one, he said, self-nature for non-harming, he called it. Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the ungilded Dharma, not giving rise to the idea of harming is the precept of non-harming. So to me, actually one of the things that I love about this, you know, phrase is this ability that we can each have when we get ideas about things. For me, that's where we get in trouble. That's where I get in trouble. I have an idea of how I'm going to integrate Buddhism and healthcare. I have an idea about what I'm going to do for this patient. I have the idea of how I'm going to provide contemplative care. I have an idea about how I'll be a good Buddhist or a good Jew. And this is harming when we separate. You know, the Chinese translate separation as one of the images they have for suffering itself is walls in the mind. How we create walls in our own mind is how we create division. And so often we do this through concepts, through giving rise and kind of building something on an idea. Right? But that wouldn't work with Cecile, having lots of ideas. What worked is just being there, just sitting down. Roshi talked about yesterday the intimacy. Weaving together, being like a cloth. Which is what it's like in these moments, if we can just stop. This actually, Symposium, has been a great, to me, a training ground. I've been really trying to think about the whole thing as the curriculum of what we're doing, and like so many wonderful ideas and so much stimulation, right? So many wonderful people, so many wonderful ideas, and next thing, next thing, next thing. And how do we, rest in not knowing, in that intimacy, not having to figure it out? But maybe even like bathing in a wonderful rain, or that bath center, that bathing center that BJ talked about. Allowing this symposium itself to be a bathing center. Allowing us to become just washed with all of these wonderful ideas. And not having to grasp onto one of them. And get it right. Oh, now I went to the symposium, now I'll know what to do. I'm going to implement this and that and this and that, and now I'm going to do this training and that training. We can't stop the waves, right? All of us who work in medical settings know that the waves, on all those machines are pretty good. Not too bad to have all the waves. Sometimes they go like that, sometimes they go like that. We don't really want the waves to stop for us yet. The stopping of the waves will happen by itself. But how do we show ourselves to ourselves? How do we not hide in the moment? Hide from ourselves. Hide from ourselves with our own ideas. To me, this is what a loving presence is. There's a woman, Chodo, and I met in Arizona, and she has a very loving presence. And I was just very struck by it. There's no barrier. She's just herself. When she walks into the room and talks to people, there she is. And when she talks, it just feels like it just is about a flow. And this is what's missing in most of the places that we work in. This joy and ease and flow. This love. So how do we do this, right? This is our project. How do we do what we don't do? So much as this wonderful, I got very kind of nostalgic hearing about Kant and all these philosophers earlier today. All of a sudden I was thinking back in college and when I was studying all these things, and it's so delightful actually. And I was thinking about William Carlos Williams and this poem that many of you probably know, and that Mrs. Spillane in 8th grade read. She turned off the lights. And she sat cross-legged on her desk, which we all thought was wild, We were like, did she lose her mind? And she's just listen to these few words. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rain beside the white chickens. We could translate that in so many ways in our work. With that exquisite, as Michael was talking about, exquisite attention. So much depends upon this situation. So much depends upon this room, bathed in light through these stained glass windows. Beneath this golden Buddha. Someone was asking about, well, this group is too small. We have to make a bigger change. But this, I love William Carlos Williams' response to that. It's about right here in this moment, this group, this moment, this breath. And I feel like this is how we will shift and continue to shift if we can remember again and again. Thank you.